Before I talk to you about my recovery, I'll talk to you about my background. I came from a working class family. I grew up with my parents, my mother, who was um, drug dependent, my grandfather, who were alcoholics. I was abused and neglected, mostly really neglected um, as a child, and the family was very chaotic. And to give you an example, I will tell you the story of Aunt Polly's wedding. Um, Aunt Polly got married up in the Adirondacks, and we went up to attend. And after the wedding, there was a reception, and we were all sitting at a big table, and there was lots of alcohol, as there are at Ukrainian functions. And um, my grandfather and my father were drinking a lot, and later on in the evening, about 9:30 or so, wham! My grandfather and father got into a knockdown, drag-out fist fight, and chaos broke free in the room. People were yelling and running around, and I disappeared. I was just totally frightened. I didn't know what to do. I ran outside to the parking lot, and it was dark, and I was crying, and I didn't know what to do or where to go or who to talk to, because I didn't want to tell anybody that I was from the family that got drunk and had a fist fight and broke up Aunt Polly's wedding. So eventually, my parents found me, and my father had blood all down his shirt and gripped the steering wheel really tightly and stared straight ahead on the way home and didn't say a word. Didn't say a word. And I was frightened because I thought, what's going to happen when we get back to the farm and my father and my grandfather get together again? But as it was, they didn't talk to each other. They didn't say anything. They went immediately to their respective rooms, and it was decided that in the morning my mother and father and I would leave, and my grandfather would stay at the farm indefinitely, and that's what he did for several years, until my father died. Um, and given this background, it's not surprising to hear that I'm sure that I became an alcoholic and a drug addict several years after graduating from high school. I went to college for a year and then bounced back and forth from San Francisco to New York City, from houseboats in Sausalito to the Lower East Side, doing every kind of drug that I could get my hands on. I sometimes would be homeless, and I would hang out in Sausalito Park waiting for a man to pick me up who would give me a place to stay for the night and something to eat, hopefully. This behavior went on, but at the same time, I still went back to school, got my bachelor's degree, and was very disciplined. Even though I was a drunk and an addict, I made myself perform. And I guess the highlight of that period was 1984, the year I decided to get clean and sober. and I graduated from the Heller School at Brandeis with a PhD in social policy research. It should have been good, and it would have been good, except without drugs and alcohol, I had nothing to soothe my nerves, which I had acquired a lot of damage when I was young. And I just got sicker and sicker the longer I was sober. I got very depressed. I was diagnosed with major depression, PTSD, anorexia, bulimia, NSSI. I made 3 suicide attempts and spent three ECT sessions, and I spent about a year off and on in mental hospitals. It was a hard time. It was a really hard time. I was even diagnosed, I even had a 100% lifetime disability status from the Social Security Administration. Because I was no longer able to work, I applied for SSDI, and they gave me a lifetime disability status. I never had to go back to work. If I didn't want to, I could have just collected disability. But as it turns out, that's not what I did and not what I wanted to do. There was something inside me that couldn't accept the lonely girl who sat on her porch and didn't have any friends, no one to talk to, no place to go, and wondered if she was ever going to have a life. I wanted a life, and I believed in change, but I knew that I had to take some responsibility for that change. So I just decided to say yes. If anybody suggested something to me that would help me get better, or somebody wanted me to go somewhere, or meet someone, or get involved in something, I would say yes. I just made a decision, no matter how scared I was, to say yes to any opportunity that came my way. And that was the beginning of my recovery.